Good morning or good afternoon P5. Another wee video here for you today looking at multiplying decimals by 10. Now there are some specific key rules to this, okay, so please watch the video carefully, listen to what the instructions are telling you, and if you have a whiteboard or a piece of paper handy there at home, get it out and have we got some of the examples that we're going to be doing together just to make sure that you know what you're doing before you start into the activity. Okay, alright, let's get started. Now, one of the most important things that we have been looking at in terms of decimals, when we have been working with them adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, is that we need to make sure we always have our column headings. So we have our thousands, hundreds, tens, units, tenths, and hundredths. So they're very, very important. And today they're going to be very important as well, because when we multiply by 10, the numbers you will see will be moving, and you need to check carefully what columns they are going into. Now, unlike any other multiplying sum, we do not need to write this out as a vertical sum. If I was asked 0.7 times 10, I do not need to write that out as a sum, as a vertical sum, with a 0.7 and a 10 underneath. What I need to do is I need to put my 0.7, and you should do this as well at home, underneath the column headings. And when we multiply by 10, the number gets bigger. It gets bigger. And you will spot now, I'm going to put my decimal point down here, and you'll see again my decimal points are all in line. You will spot when I multiply this by 10, what happens is each number in the sum moves one column to the left. So the 0 moves from the units into the tens. We have the 7 moves from the tenth. Doesn't matter that the decimal point is there, it goes past the decimal point and it goes into the units column. And because we have a decimal point, we can add our 0 on the other side of that. Now that would have been a 0 maybe here in the hundreds that we're putting across, but because it doesn't need to be there, it goes to there. So 0.7 times 7, and look down at the bottom again, equals 7.0. Now if we take another example, and we have this time, we'll have 3.1 times 10. And if you remember, we don't need to write this out as a sum, but the important thing is our column headings, and we need to make sure our 3.1 gets written in correctly. Make sure it's a 3 in the units and your 1 is in the tenths. And to help you with that, always make sure that your decimal point is in the right place. That'll guide you. In the column to the left of the decimal point, column to the right of the decimal point, your units and your tenths. And when we're multiplying that by 10, you need to remember, as it says here, you move the numbers one column to the left. So it is the numbers that are moving here, not the decimal point. My decimal point can go on the answer line again, okay, down here, and it is again all in line. And remember, one column to the left, so the units column, the 3 in there, goes into the tens column. What was in the tenths column goes across one column to the left and goes into the units column. And again, if I have a decimal point and no number after it, I can just add a 0 in there. So again, looking at my answer line down at the bottom, 3.1 times 10 gave me an answer of 31.0. Now remember, another way of writing 31.0, just forget about the decimal point and the 0. You could say 3.1 times 10 equals 31. We're going to do another example now. I'd like you to try this one yourself at home if you've just been watching so far. So take your pencil and your paper or your whiteboard and your pen, and we'll go for 4.6 times 10. So the first thing I'd like you to do on your paper, your piece of paper or your whiteboard, is to write down our column headings, our thousands, our hundreds, our tens, units, decimal point, important, tenths and hundredths. The next thing then is to take that 4.6 and to write it onto the correct columns, 4.6. Put your decimal point underneath it, again in line, keeping them all in line. And as it says in blue here at the bottom, this is our important instruction. When you multiply by 10, you move the numbers one column to the left. So the units goes into the tens column. The tenths go into the units column. Again, we hop over that decimal point. Doesn't matter, that's not a column, that's just a marker. And we have a decimal point and we have a 0 behind that because we need to have something in that column if we have a decimal point. So our answer then would be to 4.6 times 10 is 46.0. And again, another way of writing that, can you remember? That's right, we can write that as just 46. So 4.6 times 10 would be 46, or 46.0. We're going to look at another example now, and this time we're going to have a number in the units, a number in the tenths, and we're going to have a number in the hundredths column. And we're going to be multiplying that by 10. Now again, nothing to be scared of here, nothing to be worried about. I'm sure if I'd have asked you before, I told you before that you'd be multiplying a number like 3.58 by 10 and almost doing it in your head before, you would have thought, oh my goodness, I can't do that. But it is dead easy as long as you follow the rules, you use the column headings, and you move the numbers and not the decimal point. So we have 3.58 times 10, so I'm going to write that in, so should you on your bit of paper or your page. And if you want to have a go at this now, you can pause it, try and follow the rule yourself, and see if you get the right answer when we're discussing this. So 3.58 times 10, the first thing I need, yep, my decimal point. I'm going to take my first number, again, always work for your number that's furthest to the left. It is my 3, and again, following the rule, move numbers one column to the left, my 3, and it helps to draw arrows like this. It's okay to draw arrows at the start so you understand and you can spot and you can visualize where they're going. The 3 goes from the units into the tens, the 5 goes from the tenths into the next column, past the decimal point, the tenths into the units, and the hundredths moves into the tenths column. And you'll see at no stage do these numbers ever change the order they're in. They just move up and down like they're connected in a big train, moving up and down the number line. So they never swap positions. So my answer to 3.58 times 10 is 35.8. I can't simplify it this time. I can't say like the last ones I had a decimal point and a 0 when we were able to drop that off. We can't drop it off this time, but 3.58 times 10 equals 35.8. Brilliant. We'll have another go here. This one here, there's going to be the next one, there's going to be a tens, a units, a tenths, and a hundredths. So we've got a little bit bigger number this time. Okay, let's see, we'll have 86.21. And we're going to multiply that by 10. And again, follow the same steps. And if you want to pause this, please, to do this as an example with me, almost like you would in school on your whiteboard, please pause it before you continue. So I'm going to write this in. 86.21. And again, decimal point on my answer line. Multiplying by 10, follow that rule in blue, very important. Move numbers one column to the left. So I'm going to move my 8 from the tens into the hundreds. My 6 from the units into the tens. My tenths, the 2 in the tenths, goes across into the units. And my hundredths goes into my tenths column. So well done if you got that at home. You'll see multiplying 86.21 by 10 is 862.1. Now hopefully at home you'll begin to start spotting a pattern here as to what's happening with these numbers. And almost in your head you might be able to have a guess at what the answer is going to be before you write this in. It's important at the start not just to figure out, or not just to think that your guess is right, but to always do the working out. Move the columns, physically move them. If you need to actually write them out and move them on wee bits of paper, please do. Or use the arrows like I use to actually show the numbers moving from column to column. Now I'm going to put 5 or 6 examples up on the next page here. And what I want you to do at home is have a go at answering them. And then I'm going to answer them with you as a final go at this before we do our work in our booklet today. Now you'll see the key rule has moved up at the top here. Please keep that in your head as you're answering each of these. There are a couple of different types of sums here. We have sum numbers 1 to 3 which have a units and a tenths, and we have numbers 4 and 5 which have a units, a tenths and a hundredths column. Remember, the key principle is the same. When we're writing these out to solve them, you need to make sure you put the correct column headings in. And if I show you the first one here now, if you've paused this and you have answered the questions, you'll see the column headings I'm going to put in. If I just wrote in 6.8 and I had my units and my tenths, well, if I go to move this across the column now, I'm going to lose track of the columns that I'm actually going for. So remember, I will need my tenths in there as well. You always need the column past the last one that you're writing in. So we have my tenths there. So the answer to that one would be, I'm going to move my 6 across from the units to the tenths. I'm going to move my 8 across from the tenths to the units. And I've got my decimal point, so I'm going to add my 0 behind that. So my answer to this first one is 6.8 times 10 is 68.0. Number 2, and I have my 0.4, and I need my tenths, my units, and my tenths column. My tens, my units, and my tenths column. My decimal point goes in, and again, all of my numbers move one column to the left, so the 0 in the units gets moved across into the tens column. Again, they don't swap around, moves across to the left. The 4 in the tenths column goes across to the units, and because I have my decimal point, it is important for me to add my 0 after that, so it gives me an answer of 4.0. So 0.4 times 10 is 4.0, and I can forget about this first little 0 here in the end. I can put it in, 4.0 would still be right, but taking this away does not change the value of that number. The next example we'll look at together is, I'll need my black one for that, is 2.9. There's my 2.9. And again, you'll get used to this, and hopefully you'll get a bit quicker as you're doing it. Decimal point. 2 goes across from the units to the tens. 9 goes across from the tenths to the units. And again, my decimal point's there, so I can add my 0 at the end of that. So again, for that one, 2.9 times 10 equals 29, or 29.0 as we've worked out from our sum. Well done. Example number 4, we actually have our hundredths column this time. So again, I'm going to put my tens, my units, my tenths, and now my hundredths column. And I have 5.81. And I'm multiplying that by 10, so again, moving the numbers one column to the left. That's going across one column from the units to the tens. Oh, forgot about my decimal point. My 8 is going across from the tenths to the units, and again, my arrows are keeping me in line and keeping me helped here, or helping me. 1 is going from the hundredths to the tenths, so therefore there's my answer. 5.81 times 10 is 58.1. Well done if you got that. Now the last example we're going to do together is the same as the one previous. It has a hundredths column. So I'm going to put my tens, my units, my tenths, and my hundredths. Remember, it's very important to keep your T and your H small for tenths and hundredths. They are different columns to the tens and the hundreds. 7.03, decimal point. All the numbers move across one column to the left. 7 goes into the tens column. The 0 goes from the tenths to the units. 3 goes from the hundredths to the tenths. So my answer to 7.03 times 10 equals 70.3. Okay, look, well done if you've got those right when we were practicing here. If you're still working at this, have another read through the instructions, have another watch the video. A second look might actually help you. And try your very best with the sums that you have been given. Now, a little extension question here for you, and some of you might be able to get this. If we are multiplying by 10, we move everything one column to the left. Do you know what would happen if we are multiplying by 100? Have a wee think, and if there's someone near you, ask them or tell them what you think the answer is. You're right, we move everything 2 columns to the left. Well done. Now that's something we'll be moving on to in the next wee while, but for now and for this exercise today, we are multiplying by 10. We are moving the numbers one column to the left. The column headings and the decimal point stay fixed. They don't move at all. The numbers move around it. Remember, they move like a train. A train is linked together, all its carriages are linked. They never swap around positions. Okay, they maybe move forward, they move back, but they are all linked and they all stay in the same order. Look, have a wee go at the exercise you've been set today. Watch the video again if you need to. You'll be great. I know you will. You've listened very, very well, and you've done these examples, okay, on the whiteboard, on your paper, and hopefully you've been getting them right. Please let me know if there's any issues or difficulties, but I think you'll do great. Bye now.